I want to talk to you about the books that I read in February. So, according to the stats that I've kept in my reading journal, I read 6 books in February. I read 1,612 pages. My average rating was 3.58. I read 4 books by BIPOC authors and one with LGBTQIA plus representation. Now, I got my stats from Storygraph. I like the way that they do their stats. I'll probably do a reading journal update soon so I can flip through and you guys can be nosy and see what I've been putting in my journal for the first quarter of the year. So I'll probably do that at the end of March so we can just do like a quarter 1 review of my journal. It's definitely been fun keeping up to date with this. One of my goals for the year was actually to keep on track with filling out my physical reading journal because I really enjoy having something physical to look back on, and it also allows me to be creative throughout the months and use up stickers that I've been hoarding, and I actually get to do something with those. If you're like me and you like to hoard stickers but don't know where to place them, get yourself or make yourself a reading journal because this is where I use all my stickers finally. And I didn't know if I was going to have the energy to do a actual spread for every single book I've been reading, but so far I have, and I'm actually really liking that. So just a sneak peek of how it looks so far, like how much it's filled up. I know I'm building the suspense of what is inside of this thing. Well, stay tuned so you can actually see a journal update video soon if you're interested in that. But not today. Today I just want to talk to you about the books that I read in the month of February. So I'll talk to you about them in chronological order of how I read them. So the first book that I read and completed in February was called Inventing Latinos. This was a book written by Laura E. Gomez. She is a BIPOC author. She is a Mexican professor. She studied at Harvard and Stanford Law. I definitely had to look up who this author was, and finding that she was a professor or is a professor at UCLA really made sense to me because the book was highly academic. She used language that was easy to digest, so not in that way, but I say that because this book is written like a history book. I believe it is a history book. It gives the account of Latinos throughout history in the United States, how they've been treated in the United States over the years. Oh, I didn't even give you the full title. This is actually called Inventing Latinos, a new story of American racism. So I feel like obviously I really wanted to read this, not only because I am a Latina, but also because I live in the United States. And it has been very evident as of late of how much Latinos are hated in the United States. It is crazy to me how I grew up thinking something of the country that I was living in, and just finding out this year and last year how absolutely horrendous it is in actuality. How much we've been lied to, how much the government is not on our side, how eerily close we are to these dystopian novels, and that is so close to our realities, it's not even funny. You look back at slavery and you think, wow, how far we've come, and you really stop and think about it, and we haven't come very far at all. And it's disgusting. And I'm not gonna lie, it's been feeling pretty hopeless as of late of what can we do? How can we overthrow the powers that be here? All I know is we have to stick together, and what's important to me as of late is reading books that inform me, that keep me educated about the truth, and not all the lies that have been being spewed at me over the years. It's almost like I have to reteach myself history because I was never taught certain things, or the reality of certain situations were not given to me. So it's interesting that, February being Black History Month, also being the shortest month of the year, I wanted to educate myself not only on Black history, but also on the history of my own people, especially with ICE being a very prominent reality in the country that I'm living in. It's scary. We're living in terrifying times. Something that I've been reminded, though, is that it's always been bad. I just barely found out about it. So anyways, this is a really good book that is highly educational if you want to learn more about the history of Latino people in the United States and how they've been treated over the years. pick up this book, it gives so many names, dates, events, and I know one critique of this, and something I felt as well, is it is very dense. For a book that's only 336 pages, it felt so long in a good way because there was so much information. But if you're looking for a narrative story to kind of lead you through the book, you're not gonna get it here. I'm telling you, it's more like a history book where you're going in to just get like bullet lists of information, like one event after another after another. This is a non-fiction book of events. So keep that in mind if you're ready to kind of dive into something and just learn about things that have happened over the years. This would be a good book that I would probably need to reread quite a few times to really try to retain all of the information, because there was absolutely no way that I was going to retain everything that she was giving me in that book. But overall, I felt this book was very eye-opening and informative, and I would highly recommend it. I gave it 4 stars. Okay, the next book I read was highly controversial. A lot of people like this book and a lot of people hate this book. So this is Half His Age by Jeanette McCurdy. Now, I didn't read her first book, even though I know I would really love it, but for some reason, I still knew that I was gonna love her writing, and I was not mistaken. I was actually somebody who really liked this book. I understood it. I feel like I knew where she was coming from. It resonated with me. I gave this book 4 stars. Now, I might not be the most eloquent when it comes to conveying my thoughts and feelings about a book, but somebody who I really enjoy watching here on BookTube is Scotty Cherie Reads. Now, she does a full long review of this book, and we have completely similar takes on how we received this book. Now, if you want a really in-depth review of it, you can go watch her video, and I'm gonna have it linked down below because I feel like she was able to say everything that I was feeling while reading this book, and she just said it so perfectly. Now, to give a little bit from, the horse's mouth, I will tell you that I liked her writing. Some of the negative reviews were just saying like they didn't like the way it was written, or they didn't like the way that Jeanette McCurdy read the book, because she did narrate her own audiobook, and I did listen to the audiobook. That's how I consumed this book, and I loved it. I thought she read it perfectly. I actually listened to it at 1x speed. Normally I have to speed up an audiobook because I feel like the narrators read so slow. She didn't. She read it quick. I just liked her voice. Okay, so that's my take on that personally. Obviously, that's a personal preference, as is all of this. Now, let me back up and tell you what the controversy really is about this book. So this book is about a 17-year-old girl who gets into this situationship with her teacher. I feel like anytime a book is written with this kind of premise, it's gonna get a lot of hate on it. And I mean, that's understandable. We're talking about statutory rape at this point, okay? Now, something I thought was interesting is Jeanette McCurdy wrote this book to kind of process her own feelings around a toxic age gap relationship that she was actually in when she was 18. Now, she was legal age, but it was still somewhere where she was 18 with somebody, I believe, in their 30s, or I think he might have been 40. And you can see that she puts a lot of her personal feelings and self into the writing. And I know some people had qualms about that. They almost felt like it was a personal narrative, like a memoir almost, instead of being a full fiction. But I liked that. I thought the writing was so real and vulnerable, and it felt so realistic because it came from a very real place. And now this is not her actual story. This is a work of fiction. She does not hold back in this book, so definitely check your trigger warnings. Another thing that is very controversial about this book, though, is there is a lot of sex on the page. And because we're dealing with a teacher-student relationship, it's really disgusting. So I guess a critique for me about the book is maybe there was a little bit too much of that on the page. Like, I don't feel like I needed to see that fully. I got it. Like, after the first time, I was so grossed out. I could not believe that was even written on the page. That could have been it. Like, I got it after that. I didn't need to see it a few more times because this is not a romance. And I don't think she wrote it like a romance. But when it gets overly descriptive, like multiple times, I'm like, okay, I got it. I don't need smut scenes in this kind of a situation. So that's where I was a little bit grossed out. But I wouldn't remove it completely because I feel like the shock value of it is powerful to how disgusting this situation actually is. And oh my God, the period scene. Like, if you know, you know. That was intense. Like, that was a standout scene. And I don't think it was too much. I think that was, I mean, it's crazy that it didn't kind of go anywhere with that, because I thought for sure, I mean, I don't even want to spoil it for you if you're going to read it, but I wish that, I don't know, I wish there was more consequences. But you know what? Sometimes in reality, there is no real consequences. There is no real justice. I know I have like a half-finished thought there, but I'll lead that into, a lot of people didn't like the ending. The ending was kind of abrupt. You kind of get left with, wait, that's it? That's where you're gonna leave this? It almost felt like there was no full big resolution or some big like learning points or like, well, where does she go from here or this or that or whatever. I liked it. I felt like that was so real because we don't really know. And a lot of people don't like that. But I didn't mind it. I thought this book was really good. And yeah, maybe the growth isn't huge, but I will say that you do see her change. And it definitely changes from the beginning of this to the end of this. And she goes from being 17 to 18, and it's not a lot of time, right? Like in reality, that's a year. Okay, so what do we expect? This is a girl coming from a very broken home, a place where she's not getting love from her mother or her father, really searching because she's lonely and she's looking to get validated and find love and acceptance. And there's just so much to unpack in this story. I think there's just more to it than people are giving this credit for. But I don't know. I get why people may not like this book. It worked for me. It may not work for you. If you feel like this is something you'd be interested in, I say go for it and give it a shot. Don't listen to anybody else. I say read it for yourself if it intrigues you and form your own opinion about it. If nothing else, I would say these kind of books are really good to kind of educate us on warning signs. Hey, pay attention to your children. Where are they getting invited to? Who's giving your children more attention than necessary? And kind of like keep an eye out. I think subjects like this are important to talk about. This is not a romance. To me, this is a coming of age literary fiction about a very troubling, toxic situation. Also illegal. Okay, moving on. The next two books I read in February were the highest rated book on my digital TBR and the lowest rated book on my digital TBR because I did this fun vlog that was going towards my final FMC TBR, and that was like the challenge that I put for myself. That was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. So the books that I chose for that were, first, I read Son of Rosemary by Ira Levin. This was a book on my digital TBR that had the lowest average rating on Goodreads. And if you don't already know, this is the sequel to Rosemary's Baby. And if you want the full details of my thoughts on this book, you're gonna have to go back and watch that vlog because I don't want to go all the way back into it. But just know that I give it 1 star. It was horrendous. And I'll leave it at that. The next book that I read, which was the highest average on my Goodreads TBR, was One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This by Omar El Akkad. This is a nonfiction book by a BIPOC author, and I will say that I gave it 5 stars. And if you want to know all my thoughts about it, again, go back to that video. You can see the full spiel that I give about this book, but I absolutely loved it. It was very, very eye-opening for me. This book, I felt, really challenged me to take a hard look at what's going on in Palestine, and it challenged me to not look away. This book is just raw and real and terrifying. It's sad. It's really, really sad because that's still happening. That's happening, and we might be here sitting in our rooms being able to enjoy reading our little books when other people are out there just trying to survive. And it's just that hard reminder about what is going on in other parts of the world. And honestly, even a reminder of what's going on in your own backyard. Because there's still parts of my own city where people are still getting kidnapped by federal agents, getting sent to detention camps unlawfully, without due process, being stripped away from their families. There's just so much going on right now in the world. It is absolutely insane. So this book's just kind of like a hard reminder of like, hey, let's not forget about this. Hey, don't look away. Hey, don't get distracted. Remember to keep speaking about this. Remember to keep fighting about this. Every little bit of resistance matters. Every small act of resistance trains the muscle used to do it, in much the same way that turning one's eye readies it to ignore even greater horror to come. We have to keep fighting. Don't give up, stick together. So that was such a powerful book for me. If you want to hear more about it, go back to that video. I really go into depth about my thoughts on that book in that vlog. And then the last 2 books I read for February were focused on Black History Month specifically. And I love the books that I chose because I truly did learn about Black history from reading these books, and that made me so happy. The first one was Bacchanal by Veronica G. Henry. Now, this was a new author to me. I'm really excited to have found her, and I will be reading more from this author. Now, I gave this book 3.75 stars. It did fizzle out for me towards the end, but I'll kind of go into that. So I picked this book up because I wanted to read a book with a carnival setting. As you can see, I love circus, I love clowns, I love amusement parks, I love carnivals. I've actually discovered I'm a big lover of historical fiction as well. So this book takes place in, I believe it's the 1930s, and this is during the Depression era in the South. Now, what's cool about this carnival is most of the carnies are of African descent. This book is only 347 pages, and it felt very dense. It was very slow paced and not in a terrible way. I liked it actually because there was just so much character development. There was so much culture in this book. Every single character kind of had a different place that they were from, but it was really interesting to me to kind of get those different perspectives that you don't really get a lot in other books, unless you're reading from Black authors. I didn't find the main character to be the most interesting to me, to be honest. I kind of just felt more intrigued by some of the other characters in the carnival, and our main character in particular just like wasn't my favorite. I kind of was a little bit annoyed with her and how she like didn't understand how to use her powers, and I mean that's fine, but I guess I just wasn't the most intrigued by that part of it. And I will say that I feel like the ending and all of that was a bit predictable, like kind of obvious of what she needs to do. We're just watching her figure it out. But me as the reader, I was like, okay, I already know, where she needs to go, what she needs to do. And I don't know, the whole thing just kind of felt obvious to me. So in that aspect, I was kind of like, I like to be surprised. I don't like when things are too obvious. But I will say there's a bit of Black history inserted into this book that I absolutely loved learning about. So at the very end of the book, there is an afterword that gives a description of Queenie. And she is apparently based off of a real person named Stephanie Queenie St. Clair. She was a Black immigrant who held down Harlem for her people. She ran an empire. She was known as the numbers queen of Harlem. She would call out police corruption. This lady was basically a badass. This was a woman in the 1930s that was going toe-to-toe with men, police. She basically ran her area and made changes for her community. And I thought that was really interesting to learn about her. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I know everything about her now, but this was somebody that I didn't know existed, and now I know, and I'm thankful to be opening my mind up to more history and more really important figures in other cultures. I've never been a big history buff. I never paid attention to a lot of things going on in our world. I've never been interested in politics until more recently. So I'm trying to educate myself now. I feel like I am very behind. I wanted to kind of keep in the dark about a lot of things. I really felt like ignorance was bliss, and I mean, hey, it kind of is. You can live in this la la land, this fantasy world, and kind of like live in your own bubble of peace, and sometimes that is nice. However, I do feel like it's very important to educate ourselves and be aware. So I've been really trying to push myself, especially this year, to not look away, to open my eyes, to learn more, to read more diversely. And so far, it's been a very interesting, eye-opening experience. And I'm very much enjoying the things I'm learning, and I'm excited to learn more. Now, I will say something that's really cool about reading about this woman here in Bacchanal has led me to understanding something in The Ballad of Black Tom. This is my current read here in March. Queenie St. Clair is mentioned as a character in this story. I mean, she's a bit of also, I think, a side character, but she's mentioned. And instead of that reference going completely over my head, I got it. And that feels good because I would not have even known what they were talking about. I wouldn't have known that this was a reference to a real woman. To get that little Easter egg that's thrown in there, I'm like, I know who that is. That is so cool. That's a real person. And she's included in this book, just like she's included in Bacchanal. I was just really excited when that came up. Okay, and now for the last book I read in February, I read Ring Shout by P. Gillet Clarke. Now, this is also the first book I read by this author. And when I tell you a novella that packs a punch, honestly, these two books, wow, I didn't know that short books could be so good. I guess I was just picking up the wrong short books in the past because these two books feel like full-length novels. Like, how did these authors put so much into so little pages? I have no idea, but both of these books highly recommend. I haven't even finished this one yet, but I'm so invested. But I think because it's so short, I don't want it to end. So I'm taking my time and trying to like really let it sink in because I'm just enjoying it so much. But anyways, back to this book. I'm gonna be honest with you. It didn't resonate with me while I was reading it. And I really believe that it's because I didn't get a lot of the references. I didn't understand a lot of the culture. There is so much Black culture in this book. I had to go and research why this book is so impactful after I read it. Now, there's the obvious reasons, right? You have basically a monster hunting book. This is very much a monster horror book where the KKK is not just people, they are actually literal demon monsters that these Black women are fighting, which is already right off the bat so freaking cool. This is full of action and fantasy and horror, but I knew there was more to it than that. So for me, while I was reading it, I was like, oh, this is a 3-star book for me. But I know this is a 5-star read. So where is the disconnect happening? And I knew that was on me. And so what I did was go, after I finished this, I went to reviews from Black booktubers and I listened to what they had to say about why this book resonated so powerfully for them. I also did some of my own research of Googling things that I didn't understand. For instance, gullah. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what that meant. I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't fully comprehend it entirely, but actually I did find some information about it. The only reference to gullah I've ever had was watching Gullah Gullah Island as a kid and realizing now I didn't actually understand what that even was until I looked it up. And I pulled up a page right now and I'm gonna read you a little bit from there just in case you also don't know what gullah is. In an effort to communicate, the slaves developed a Creole-based language that combined English and a variety of African words from the various countries. The language was multi-purposed. It enabled the slaves to communicate amongst themselves without sharing the conversation with slave owners, also providing them the opportunity to give coded information or directions to each other in secret. To the slave owner, the language, because of its sound, and somewhat similarity to broken English, came across as ignorant and an inability to adapt to a proper way of speaking. The language, however, was quite genius. And just reading that, it reminded me of James and how in James he talks about having this like secret way of speaking. Now, please, if you know more information about this, please let me know in the comments so I can understand it a little bit better. But how I'm understanding it, it says in the technical sense, the Sea Island slaves from North Carolina or South Carolina were Gullah. And then from Georgia to Florida, the slaves were considered to be the Geechee. Now, I didn't know about any of this. I am not from the South. I am from Los Angeles, California. I live in my own little bubble. And in my area, there's not a lot of Black people. Where I live, where I grew up, it's been predominantly Latinos and Asians all my life. When I went to school, there was like 2 Black people and 2 white people in the whole school. So I am learning. And it is fascinating to me because I'm learning that I really enjoy reading about history. And it's also devastating and heartbreaking because I'm also seeing that we haven't come a very long way, like you would hope. But that being said, I am excited to continue reading books by diverse authors, getting new perspectives, learning about different cultures. I had a very enjoyable time reading these 6 very different books. I hope you learned something today. I hope you found another book to add to your never-ending TBR, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye, everyone.